In July 1973, a desperate business founder walked into a Las Vegas casino with the last $5,000 of his company's bank account. His business had just $24,000 in unpaid jet fuel bills, planes scheduled to fly in less than 72 hours, and not a single bank in America willing to lend him another penny. By Monday morning, he either had to produce $24,000 or watch his dream vanish forever. But here is the shocking truth almost everyone gets wrong. This was not a story of an ordinary, poor delivery driver who got lucky. It was the calculated, near-fatal gamble of a decorated veteran who discovered a hidden flaw in modern commerce and risked his entire life to prove every expert in the world completely wrong. How did a business that lost $27 million in its first 2 years transform into a global empire that moves over 15 million packages every single day? The answer begins with a bizarre contradiction. Most people believe revolutionary companies start with brilliant inventions or massive customer demand. But in 1965, when a young college student named Fred Smith wrote an economics term paper at Yale University, the entire business world believed his idea was physically impossible. Fred looked at the way goods moved across the United States. Back then, if a hospital in New York needed an urgent medical device from Chicago, the package was tossed onto passenger airlines or passenger trains. But passenger routes were designed for people, not packages. If the flight was delayed or if a passenger had extra luggage, the package was left behind on the tarmac. Cargo took days, sometimes weeks, to arrive. Fred proposed a radical solution. Do not carry people at all. Buy a fleet of dedicated cargo jets, fly all the packages into one single, centralized hub in the middle of the night, sort them in a few hours, and fly them right back out before sunrise. His professor looked at the paper, saw the massive fuel costs, the empty return flights, and the sheer operational madness, and gave him a mediocre grade. The academic establishment thought the idea was inefficient. They were looking at flight schedules. Fred was looking at the future of the American economy. To understand why Fred saw what nobody else could, you have to look at what he experienced next. After college, Fred enlisted in the United States Marine Corps and served 2 tours in the Vietnam War. He was not sitting behind a desk. He was a platoon leader and a forward air controller, flying over 200 combat missions. In the jungle, Fred learned a brutal life-or-death operational lesson. When a military unit needed ammunition, blood plasma, or replacement parts, a delay of 12 hours did not mean lost revenue. It meant lost lives. He watched how the military moved critical supplies under extreme pressure, using centralized coordination, precise timing, and ruthless discipline. When Fred returned to civilian life in 1969, he looked at American industry with completely new eyes. The computer age was just beginning. Companies like IBM and Xerox were building complex, high-tech electronic machines for offices across the country. But these machines had a fatal weakness. If a tiny $5 microchip broke down, an entire multi-million-dollar factory or corporate office ground to a complete halt. Companies could not afford to wait 3 days for a replacement part. A delayed box of parts was now costing corporations hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost productivity every single hour. The world had fundamentally shifted from moving heavy, slow freight to moving light, high-value, time-critical information and components. Fred realized that speed was no longer a luxury. Speed was becoming the most valuable currency in modern business. He did not want to build a local courier service with vans. He wanted to build an entire national transportation network from day one. But doing this required something that terrified every traditional investor: astronomical amounts of upfront capital. Fred took his $4 million family inheritance and put every single dollar on the table. Then, using sheer persistence and economic projections, he convinced major venture capitalists and banks to invest an additional $80 million. In the early 1970s, it was the largest venture capital startup in American business history. He bought 33 small corporate jets, modified them with cargo doors, hired pilots, mechanics, and drivers, and built a massive central sorting facility in Memphis, Tennessee. On the night of April 17, 1973, the system was finally ready. 14 aircraft took off from cities across America, flying toward Memphis under the cover of darkness. Hundreds of workers stood along the sorting belts, waiting for the massive flood of packages that would prove Fred's vision to the world. The planes landed. The cargo doors opened, and out came exactly 186 packages. More than a third of those packages were test shipments sent by Fred's own employees to make sure the tracking system worked. The company had spent millions of dollars to fly virtually empty airplanes through the night sky. The financial bleed was instant and catastrophic. Every single night, those planes had to fly, whether they carried 10,000 packages or 10. Jet fuel, pilot salaries, airport landing fees, and maintenance costs were fixed. Within months, the company was hemorrhaging more than $1 million every single month. Investors were furious. The board of directors demanded that Fred step down. Creditors began circling the company like vultures, threatening to impound the aircraft for unpaid maintenance bills. And then came the knockout blow. In late 1973, the global oil crisis struck. The price of jet fuel skyrocketed overnight, multiplying Federal Express's operational costs while revenues remained dangerously low. By the summer of 1974, the company was down to its final $5,000. A critical fuel supplier gave Fred an ultimatum: pay $24,000 by Monday, or fuel deliveries would stop immediately. If the planes did not fly on Monday night, the network would collapse, and bankruptcy was guaranteed. Fred walked into an investment bank on Friday morning to plead for an emergency loan. The banker looked him in the eye and said no. As Fred walked out into the street, staring at $5,000 in remaining capital, he faced a decision that no business textbook would ever teach. He did not go home to prepare bankruptcy filings. Instead, he boarded a flight to Las Vegas. He walked up to a blackjack table, placed the company's remaining funds on the felt, and started playing. It was a reckless, desperate act of survival. By Sunday afternoon, through an extraordinary run of luck and nerve, Fred had turned that $5,000 into $27,000. He wired the $24,000 directly to the fuel company on Monday morning. The planes flew that night. Years later, Fred would admit that the blackjack winnings did not save the company permanently, but it bought them exactly one more week of oxygen. And in that 1 week, something fundamental began to shift. Fred realized that their entire marketing strategy was wrong. They had been trying to sell their service to corporate shipping managers and warehouse directors. But shipping managers did not care about overnight delivery. They cared about saving money on bulk freight. The people who actually desperately needed overnight speed were executive secretaries, lawyers, accountants, and corporate managers. These were the people who stayed late at the office, panicking over a signed legal contract, an urgent blueprint, or a critical financial audit that had to be in another city by morning. Fred shifted the entire business focus. Federal Express stopped talking about airplanes and logistics. Instead, they launched an iconic message that spoke directly to human anxiety. When it absolutely, positively has to be there overnight. They did not sell transportation anymore. They sold peace of mind. At the exact same time, Fred introduced a hidden operational breakthrough that would change global supply chains forever: the hub-and-spoke system. Traditional logistics worked on point-to-point routing. If you had 10 cities, connecting every city directly to every other city required 45 separate flight routes. If you expanded to 100 cities, you needed nearly 5,000 individual routes. It was impossible to scale. Under Fred's hub-and-spoke model, every city only needed to connect to one central location: Memphis. 100 cities required only 100 flight routes. Packages converged in Memphis between midnight and 2 in the morning, were sorted at high speed, loaded back onto the planes, and flown to their destination cities before sunrise. Local delivery vans then took the packages directly to the customer's doorstep by 10:30 in the morning. Suddenly, the math of the business flipped. As package volume increased, The cost of flying each plane remained almost the same, but the profit per package exploded. In 1975, Federal Express posted its very first profitable month. By 1976, the company was carrying 19,000 packages a night and generating millions in clear profit. They had built a machine that became more efficient the larger it grew. Yet, just as the company seemed unstoppable, a powerful new threat emerged. The giant legacy airlines and the United States Postal Service realized that Federal Express had created an entirely new multi-billion-dollar market. Competitors began copying their tracking forms, offering expedited delivery, and attempting to undercut their prices. Fred knew that low prices would never create permanent customer loyalty. Competitors could always match a price. He needed to build a moat so deep that no rival could ever cross it. The secret was information. In the late 1970s, Fred made a massive investment in computer technology, introducing the world's first handheld digital barcode scanners for delivery drivers, called the Super Tracker. For the first time in human history, a customer could call a company and find out the exact physical location of their package in real time. Fred famously told his team, "The information about the package is just as important as the package itself." While competitors were still relying on paper receipts and manual sorting, Federal Express was turning logistics into a precision data science. Customers became fiercely loyal, not just because the packages arrived on time, but because the uncertainty of business shipping had been completely eliminated. By 1989, the company had acquired major international air routes, expanded into Asia and Europe, and officially rebranded itself to the name the world was already using: FedEx. Today, FedEx operates hundreds of cargo aircraft, hundreds of thousands of delivery vehicles, and connects more than 220 countries and territories worldwide.